Oh, we're live now.
All right,
Hi
we're live.
everyone. Hi. Welcome to our live about how to scale your dropshipping sales in 2021. I'm Ilaria from Yakify, and I'm really thrilled to have here with me today one of the greatest influencers and experts in the dropshipping and e-commerce sector, Nick Peroni. So how are you today, Nick?
Hey, what's up, everyone? Well, thank you so much for that kind intro there. I'm doing fantastic. Pleasure to be here talking with you.
I'm glad. Only to give you a bit of introduction here, for those who don't know, Nick is the founder of Ecom a huge community joined by over 85,000 entrepreneurs around the world that helps online businesses owners learn the best way to create profits through e-commerce. Incredible, right? So before digging into the main topic, Nick, do you want to give us a short overview of Ecom and your experience, how you started and how long you've been working in e-commerce and dropshipping, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2016 is when I discovered drop shipping. I was right around the beginning of the year. I really didn't know what it was, and I saw people that were making really good money just running ads on Facebook, and I was fascinated. So I jumped in, and it was a little different back then how it worked, but I immediately fell in love with it, and it started working for me very well. And what I really, where it connects to ecom empires is something I was always very passionate about is helping and teaching others how to, let's say online business to create a lifestyle of freedom. That's what it was always about for me. And I had been grinding away at that for years and years and years. I actually had a business before drop shipping, but it was like something that I didn't enjoy. I was kind of a slave to it. And when I discovered drop shipping, I was like, wow, this is it. I started traveling and everything was so amazing. And then that's when I decided I wanted to start Ecom Empires. And I just had this idea that I wanted to help share the content and get this out to other people because it had changed my life literally. And I wanted to see if that same content could work for others and that they would be able to do this as well. And the rest is history. I mean, that was 5 years ago, and actually, the group is over 98,000 members now. We just crossed 98,000 members.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been, honestly, the group changed my life in ways I did not expect. I've traveled the world. I've spoken in over 20 countries now, and I've been blessed enough to help, hundreds, thousands of people be able to get started in this industry and get real results. So it's been amazing, and I think it's just an amazing time to be alive and have these opportunities with this type of business model using the internet.
That's quite amazing indeed. So what was the business that you were doing before? Was it something that you started as well, right?
Yeah, it was something that I started with a partner. I was kind of just trying to figure out my way. I was an Army veteran that dropped out of college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I eventually met somebody at a job I was working with, and we started a photo booth company, which in America was becoming very popular at the time. I realize it's not popular all over the world, but it was my first experience learning like how to build a website, how to run ads, and then how to bring these people into a sales funnel, essentially. And it ended up becoming the first $1 million company that I built with my business partner at the time. But like I said, it wasn't fun. At the height of it, I was managing a team of like 50 to 60 people, and it was just like so much stress and so much. And then I learned about drop shipping, and I found out you can sell products online without ever talking to anybody, ever seeing the product or ever. And I was like, my mind was blown. And so I immediately did like a 180 and started doing that instead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an interesting concept to think that you can sell something that does not belong to you and then also profit on it. That's amazing. And you don't even have the hassle of having an inventory or any kind of additional expenses, right? Like
Yeah.
when I started working with Yakify, I was actually blown out as well because I was like, this is not what I knew business was. So it was quite amazing, and helping also a lot of dropship and e-commerce find their products was also very nice. Like when I saw that their sales grew, it was just like I was happy myself for some reason, because if they're happy, we're happy as well. So we know that you're a very busy man. So first of all, thank you very much for being here with us today and dedicate to us some of your precious time to give some advice on how to scale dropshipping sales in 2021. So let's start. You guys at home, don't forget to write your questions in the comments. We will try to reply to them all at the end of this interview. So keep on watching, and don't forget that we also have a special bonus for those who follow us until the end. A special bonus offered by Ecom Empires by Nick Peroni, a special bonus offered by Yakify, and last but not least, at the end of the QA session, Nick will choose his 3 favorite questions, and the 3 winners will get $50 on the Yakify wallet. They can use this money just to purchase products or services from us. So let us start. We all know that when we're speaking about scaling, there are 2 main factors to consider. One is suppliers and logistics, and the other one is advertising. So we will start with the logistics, with which actually Yakify can help out, as our software can help dropshippers source their products, and we can also ship worldwide. And in quite a few countries, we can deliver in 9 to 15 days with our special line service, and 3 to 8 days with our premium special line service, which is quite amazing. So this is why we always try to give the best service, because as we know, smooth logistics and fast shipping are 2 of the most important challenges in dropshipping. Our problem is a problem in one of these 2 processes can be a pitfall for an entire business. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in drop shipping, because, people are already somewhat accustomed, especially in America with the shorter shipping times because of big companies like Amazon, of course. And when you start drop shipping and you have this 2 to 3 week period, it becomes so important to figure out ways, once you find something that's working, on how you can cut the shipping time down. And, I was not asked to say this at all, but I've actually used Yakify to scale to thousands of orders a month. And the premium line shipping is, one of the things I love, and this is what drop shipping should be for everybody, really, is an evolution. And part of the evolution is in your supply chain. And so, being able to, when you have something and you want to scale it, you need to be able to carry inventory, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to put your inventory and ship, in bulk all the way across the sea. You can work with a company like Yakify who can store your inventory for you in China, cut your processing time down to 24 hours. And when you're using premium line shipping, you can be getting sub 10-day delivery times to America. Which isn't as fast as Amazon, but it's still very respectable and will be good enough for most people. And so, yeah, it's super important. And that's one of the things in scaling that you really need to have on point, or else, when you're doing 5 to 10,000 orders a month, if you have orders that are taking 2, 3, 4 weeks to get there, that's 5 to 10,000 headaches a month you're going to have.
Absolutely. As most of you know, Yakify also offers free warehouse space for our clients. So if you buy your stocks with us, you can keep them for free in our warehouse in Shenzhen. About the shipping in particular, do you sell all over the world, or do you select just a few countries? Is your country selection in some way determined by the shipping time?
I typically have always, 90% of the sales that I've done across any store have been the United States. It's just always, I understand it very well. It's a huge market. So it's always number 1 market for me. And then when I have something that works, I will start looking to some of the other countries where I think that product is applicable, like United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, these types of countries, to see if I can scale more sales there.
Sorry.
Bless you. But yeah, it's always been mostly the United States for me. But I do know I know some people that drop ship just worldwide, and that's what they do. So it can work either way. I think that's just a matter of preference for me.
I see. So you mentioned before that you don't only kind of sell products that you don't own just in the moment, that you also have some inventory with us. Is that correct? So do you think it would be a good idea to get some inventory once you found a winning product?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how easy it is. It's interesting because people they'll think that this idea of private labeling a product is so complicated, and I guess used to it would be, but genuinely and sincerely with a company like Yakify, it's much easier. Like, we had a product that we were scaling, and I was able to work to get custom packaging, get a custom insert in there that was like instructions on how to use the product. Super cheap. It was like 50 cents per unit, right? And that was all just being bulk ordered at one time, sitting in the warehouse. And then when I needed the other stuff, which Yakify helped me source even a better bundle version of that product. So I was able to increase my average order value, increase the packaging, and it worked really well. And there was even custom labels, printed on the packaging, and it makes it so simple, right? So at that point, we basically had stepped from almost a hybrid of drop shipping and private label in between there, where we're private labeling the product, but we're still shipping it from China, but we're getting much faster shipping times than most people are that are not carrying inventory.
Absolutely. And besides, the private labeling of a product also kind of raises its perceived value. Is that correct?
Yes,
People
yeah,
think,
of course. Yeah, this
lovely.
is a good point, and I'm not going to say like without necessarily getting into what each individual product might be. There's examples. People always ask like, well, what if it's on Amazon? You can't. They're selling it cheap on Amazon. Can you sell it? But that's where that perceived value, like you mentioned, when you build a really good store, your marketing and your branding and the packaging as well is all raising the perceived value. There's products that you might see on Amazon for $15 that you could be selling for $50, $60, $70. And that I've done that and it works. And you can sell hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, even though that product elsewhere is listed much cheaper, simply because you're the one building the brand. So you have all the value in what you're doing.
That's lovely. So as we all know, many things have changed in 2020. But of course, the most important was that COVID-19, unfortunately. So how has COVID impacted your shipping, and how did you solve the problem?
Well, shipping was a nightmare for everybody, I think, for when it first hit, because nobody knew it was going to happen. Worldwide lockdowns was unprecedented. So everybody got hit with shipping, and it was understandable. Even massive companies. I remember I ordered my mom flowers for Mother's Day. They never got delivered. It was from a big company too. It was from 1-800-Flowers, which is like this monster company in America. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, like 2 weeks after Mother's Day, they refunded me and said, sorry, we never delivered it. So everybody was getting hit by these kinds of massive challenges because of the shipping when COVID happened. So I think what was really important in that time is being able to work with a supplier that was constantly exploring alternative shipping methods. A lot of people don't realize, and I've actually gotten to know this by working with Yakify closely. A lot of people don't realize that there's different parts to the, like it's not just one, like you ship it off and there's forwarders, right? There's forwarders that control the packaging in China to get it to the destination port. And then there's different things along the way. There's customs in America, then there's the last mile delivery. So you really need to work with a supplier that is on top of all these different pieces, how they connect together so that they can find the best route to get you there. Say this route's not working, it's delayed and backed up. Maybe they found this route that they can work with you now that can get it there instead.
That's lovely. Thank you very much for explaining that. So now that we've covered the logistics, we need to understand how to scale your products in Facebook using campaigns. So Nick, are there any tips that you can share with us to get us started? Like, for example, a new dropshipper, what should he or she start with?
The biggest tip, and this is, I'm going to come back to specifics of Facebook, so I don't want anybody to think I'm skipping the question here, but the biggest tip that I really could give is that half the battle is won in how good your marketing is. And I've seen this over and over and over again. Like if your marketing is really good, like you find a product that actually has a high perceived value, it solves some sort of problem, or it really does something for people that's like it brings value. It's not just garbage. It's like something that actually it matters. So if you have that and you're building a good brand around that, and you're getting like really good marketing, meaning your video creative, what you're doing, like it's all on point. These parts go together. And when you do that, that's really half the battle, because Facebook ads to me is actually pretty simple. When you have the good marketing, when it comes to scaling, a lot of people are surprised when they try my methods and it works, how simple the scaling can be. And that's because a lot of the work is done on the marketing. So I start off, and I still do this. I've been doing this since 2016. I still do it in 2021. People always try, it's funny because I've been one of the ones to stick around in this game, and people always ask me if it still works, and I'm always still doing it, and I'm always still showing other people how to do it, and it's continued to work. Starting off with, $5 daily budgets on a lot of different audiences, right? Like, different, we can come back and talk about audiences, but starting off on $5 daily budgets. And then when you find something that's working, right? I like to think of this as testing at a small budget so you can isolate what's working before you try spending too much. That way you're figuring out the variables of what's working before you start to scale at the higher spend. So what I like to do when I'm scaling is using what's, the CBO method on Facebook. So when I have an audience that I can prove at a small $5 daily budget, and I know that that audience is working, I'll then take that audience and move it into a larger budget, like $100 a day, for example, as a CBO campaign, because I already know it's working. And so it's much more likely to continue working at the higher budget in the CBO, where I give Facebook the control to kind of just say, just run with this now and get me more buyers. So that's how I approach scaling. I like to test small and isolate audiences and creatives that work. And then when I do know they work, I will take them to higher budgets using a CBO so that Facebook can use the campaign budget optimization to optimize for me using what I know already works. That makes sense.
It does. I just have one follow-up question regarding this. When you say an audience works, do you mean that they kind of click on the link, or do they add to cart or buy the product?
So yeah, that's a fantastic question. So what I mean specifically is purchases. So, right. Typically in drop shipping, what we're doing, there's a difference, and I want to be clear for anybody watching this. There's a difference between an agency approach to running Facebook ads and like somebody who's drop shipping and you're trying to get that first success. You're trying to get that first 6-figure store, that first 7-figure store. Because agencies, when they work with a brand, that's it, right? Like they know this is it. And so it's a different strategy. But when you're drop shipping, you're trying to find what works and then scale it as quickly as possible. To be honest, that's what we're doing. We're trying to scale as quickly as possible. So when I test these audiences, what I'm looking for is, say, starting with 10 different audiences at $5 a day, I'm looking for the ones that are getting purchases. And my specific identifiers is I like to see an audience with 3 purchases at least a 3 times return on the ad spend. And if I see that, for me, that's an indicator to take that audience and move it into its own campaign, CBO campaign at a higher budget to see if it'll continue to perform well at the higher budget.
So how do you choose which target and audience to? No, actually, you actually just clear that out. So you just like, for example, when you choose a product, how do you approach the audience? Sort of, how do you look for an audience?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I didn't talk about audiences, and people are probably wondering, like, so 10 audiences, how do you? So one thing is, number one is, you'll see like the idea between how many audiences to test. So I always try to go more audiences at a lower budget than, say, less audiences at a higher budget. Like some people will say, well, I can test 5 audiences at $20 a day. I'd say, why not test 20 audiences at $5 a day, right? Because you're getting to test more, and more. And, I've been doing this, and, I like, not to brag here, but just so anybody that doesn't know me knows that this is not just like, oh, these, I've done up to 750K in a month doing these strategies. So like this really works at high volume as well. And the whole idea is finding these audiences in the beginning at the $5 daily budgets. So when I'm doing that, I'm looking for, say you have a garden product, right? It's springtime. Garden products are very popular. It's a fantastic niche going into the spring. So say you have a garden product. For me, those audiences, like what I'm doing is not, that's why I say it's simple. I'm not trying to, Facebook is super smart. their algorithm. Say what you want about Facebook in other areas, and I'm not a fan of them in all their areas, but when it comes to their algorithm for advertising, they are super smart. They know what they're doing. So I let them do the hard work. If I have a gardening product, I'm going to go through and find audiences like gardening, right? Super obvious, but that's an audience that could work if your product is good and if your marketing is good, right? Because Facebook knows who to go out there and find. So there's audiences like gardening, garden furniture, landscaping, backyard. These are all the types of audiences that I would start going through, thinking about like your product, and then thinking, okay, who is the most obvious customer here, and how can I define them in Facebook's language, right? So if I have a garden product, I know that's probably generally going to be people who live in a home and have a yard, and in a lot of the cases, maybe not everybody, but a very broad and obvious one. So thinking of those types of interests like backyard, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because I know that people have backyards. So that's the way I think about it. And I try to come up with like 10 to 15 of those types of audiences. And I like to see those audiences in a size of like 2 million to 2 million to 30 million, somewhere in that range, which is a big range, but that's how I look at it.
And that's an audience you usually keep in the US, correct? That's a US audience.
That's one of the reasons why I like the US so much, because it's going to be harder to find those audiences that are in the millions in the smaller countries. So it's not to say the audiences won't be good if you're targeting something like Canada, but the US has 300 million people. Canada's got like 70 million people, right? So your audiences are going to be a lot smaller. And I like to look for scale. I want to look for a product that I know that if it hits, I can go to 6 figures a month quickly, right? And so that's kind of like why I like the bigger audiences, which I find very easily in the US, because I know if it works at $5 a day and I got an audience of 10 million people here, I have a really good chance of scaling that very quickly because it's a big audience and I already know it works.
And do you actually use the Facebook A/B testing tool? Or do you not?
No, I don't use that.
All right. How about automatic placements or manual placements? Which one do you prefer?
I do not use automatic. I typically, in the testing phase, I use automatic placements for retargeting. But in the testing phase, I am typically sticking to just the Facebook newsfeed because I know that that's where the primary of the buyers are. I don't like to mix Instagram in there because I'll test Instagram separately later. I like to isolate them. Me personally, it's not, it's just, this is kind of preference.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I like to isolate them because for me, then I know what's working. And if I'm testing both of them. So anyway, that's just me in the testing phase. And I don't run stories usually in the testing phase either because they requires a special kind of ad format. So stories is something in the scaling phase. Same thing with Instagram for me. I would do them separately once I already know something's working.
Just to remind everybody who's watching us, we're going to have some special bonuses at the end. And Nick is going to choose his 3 favorite questions. And the winners are going to be awarded $50 in the Yakify wallet, which they can use to purchase products and also to purchase services from us. So next question. Do you have the same ads when copying in an ad group, or do you create a kind of a new copy for each group?
By ad group, you mean like when a product is scaling, or what specifically?
Yeah, we're talking about scaling. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have. So for me, again, this is not what an agency is going to tell you, and I want to be clear about that because I know that a lot of people follow agency owners out there, and I think it's very different type of advertising than building something from scratch on your own. So for me, when I have a winning video, I am looking to squeeze as much juice out of that video as possible. And I have, you'd be surprised. I think a lot of people would be surprised. I have seen videos be able to scale up to 20 million views and nearly $2 million in sales without running out of steam. Right now, that's a rare situation. I'm not going to say that every product is like that. Every campaign can run like that and just keep going and not stop. But that is what I look for first. I look for, you know, a video. Not I should When I have a video, what I mean to say is I look to use that winning creative as much as possible, as aggressively as possible, and until it starts to run out of steam, and then I will start to bring in other creatives. So I'm duplicating that video basically to, I guess, to get into the technical way of how I'm doing this. I am duplicating that video into new audiences once I know that it works.
So you prefer videos to images? Do you find that they sell more?
Images I like to use in the retargeting. I find in my experience for drop shipping products that now, you know, certain products, maybe like apparel, you don't need videos. I don't typically sell apparel though. So the type of drop shipping products that I have sold are like problem solution products. And I find that videos work super well, which is like you know, most drop shippers I think would be familiar. It's like the infomercial type of video where you start out with the problem and then you kind of show the solution, explain the benefits, and then give them a call to action kind of video.
That's awesome. So do you think it is better to create only one campaign worldwide or divide them into different countries when you actually don't sell only in the US, when you choose other audiences as well?
So I separate them. You know, that's a good question. It kind of varies from me, I think, based on, you know, because some products have more mass appeal than other products, and in my experience. So, like some products, I think would be good to as a worldwide campaign, right? I'm always going to separate U.S. from worldwide, but you know, like within the worldwide, some of them I'll just group the top, I guess, the top shipping line countries is what I think of them as, like UK, Ireland, Spain, France, Australia. You know, all these countries tend to have much smaller sizes, and I know they all have good shipping lines. So I would probably
Even
group them
Spain?
all together. Yeah, you guys have a premium line to Spain, I think. Yakify
Yes,
has one, right?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
as a follow-up question, if I may, this is from me. So when you actually target a campaign of yours to Spain, do you write it in Spanish, or you kind of try to focus on the English speaking part of the population?
English speaking when I'm doing it group like that. Now, one thing I will mention, a fantastic opportunity for anybody that's watching is selling in different languages. I don't know why it took me so long to do this. I know other people have done it. I started playing around with it last year, selling in German, and it works just like selling in English. It's, you know, it's like the customer service is a little bit more tricky because you got to get somebody that you know that can speak the language. Whereas building the store is simple because you can just go to Fiverr and pay somebody to translate the whole thing for you. But it's a fantastic opportunity. I do know some people that are doing it, but in those situations, if you want to sell in a different language, like France and Germany, I think are two of the biggest markets that you could translate into for French and German. Then yeah, I would write everything in that language, and I would specifically isolate that by itself, even create a whole separate store for it by itself. But when I have an English store and an English ad, then I would group all those countries together and just select the option of English speaking only.
Okay. And when it is time to turn off campaigns, do you scale down or you just simply turn it off?
Depends. It actually depends. I don't typically scale down because I find that is counterproductive most of the time. So it kind of depends too. Like if I scale in levels. So one of the ways that I kind of watch for this is scaling in levels to kind of bracket what is working. So like going back to my example of I have an audience that works. My first level would be to move it to $100 CBO. If it works at the $100 CBO, I would then move it to a $250 CBO. So I'm giving it a time frame to see if it works in between, and I'm bracketing the budget. So then, yeah, if it doesn't work at the higher budget, then I would scale back down to the budget where I knew it worked. Because I'll go say and this is just per audience. So 100 to 250 to 500 to $1,000 a day, right? That's pretty much the evolution of it. So if I go if it's working at 500 and I try to go to 1,000, it doesn't work. And I know, okay, it works at 500. Let's keep it here. So I guess in that sense, I do scale it down. But it's more for me, like, I don't know. I guess you could call it scaling it down, or I kind of think of it as just testing higher price point or higher budgets to see if it works. And if it doesn't, I just remain where I'm at. But I am always trying to push it to a higher budget based on the size of the audience.
So what was for you the biggest change in Facebook advertising for dropshipping in 2020? We know that obviously society is changing. So what was your biggest concern and which are the biggest opportunities for you?
I mean, well, the biggest concern with Facebook is just the volatility of shutting ad accounts down. I mean, it's it's been crazy. And I'll be very real. Facebook has certainly started to discriminate a little bit against what they perceive as drop shipping stores. Some people would argue I know some people that say Facebook is perfect and they never shut anybody down unless you've done something wrong. I don't personally believe that, because I've been doing this for a long time and I've worked with thousands of advertisers all around the world, and I have seen Facebook plenty of times shut down people for absolutely no good reason at all. So that seemed to hit a very high peak of volatility around the elections. That could be coincidence, who knows? But that was the biggest challenge, I think, for most drop shipping advertisers in 2020, is just the volatility of Facebook. However, the opportunity in that is for the people who are adapting, who are fighting through it, who are sticking with it. You're seeing, I think, a little bit less competition out there, because that's kind of getting rid of some of the, separating the wheat from the chaff, as they say.
So we did speak about private labeling your products, and you said that you have done this in the past. So what do you think is the main difference between private labeling the products and the packaging? And when do you actually choose to do one or the other, or both?
I guess technically, if somebody wanted to get real technical, the difference would be private labeling is when you technically go to the manufacturer and you have them print your logo like right on whatever the widget is or the gadget or whatever you're selling. For me, I don't really care about printing it directly on the item. I think of private labeling as being able to get your own custom packaging. Taking it further than that is fantastic, but if you're getting your own private packaging and you have an unbranded product, right? Like, I never drop ship branded products specifically for this reason, because I don't want to create a brand on my store and then have them receive some kind of brand, from whatever. So if you are selling an unbranded product and you create branded packaging, in my mind, that's close enough to private labeling to be able to give that experience to a consumer.
And it's much cheaper as well.
Yeah, it is. It is cheaper. When you start buying in bulk, you get bulk discounts. So it's definitely cheaper for you to do that. As a seller, you have to put a little bit of capital up front, but in the long run, figuring out the economics, you're making more money.
Absolutely. Well, that's amazing. So our interview of you and I ends here, because we have quite a few questions from our viewers.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just start right off. Dragan Nichols. I'm sorry, I'll just say the name. Dragan asks how to target the right audience on Facebook marketing.
Okay, so targeting the right audience for me is, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but to go into, I guess, another example, kind of a specific, like, say, okay, a very popular product last year was the heat activated knee brace, right? So this was a really hot product. It was basically a knee brace, goes around your knee, but it also had like an electrical heat sensor in there to give you the heat. So, for me, some audiences that are very obvious that come out of that are like people that have arthritis, right? So you can start looking around audiences of people that have arthritis. You have to start, for me, it's like I think about the product and I think about why would somebody need this? Okay, so somebody's going to need this if they have knee pain, and then you start thinking about, what are the reasons? What activities would they be involved in? What kind of lifestyle would they have that might give them knee pain? Well, that could be older people, that could be sports players, that could be people that have arthritis, like I said, people that have some sort of condition. So that's kind of to me, it's not a very complicated process. I look at what the product is and I try to think about who is the person that's using this, and then how can I find them on Facebook. I'll give another example, going back to gardening products, because I love gardening products. They always do very well every year. An audience that works, that kind of was not a direct, but I had to think about it, is I think about, okay, this type of product that people use in a garden, this is probably people that are living in a home. And so what are some of the ways that Facebook could define that, these types of family oriented or people living in a home that might have a garden? And one of the audiences I found was the audience it was called rural area. So basically people living in a rural area, which is not something I would have thought of right away. It's not even really like a term that people use. Being a Italian Philadelphia guy, it even sounds funny when I try to say the word rural, but it's like, this was an audience that I found that was killing it. We scaled like hundreds, thousands of purchases out of this audience, simply by like thinking about who is the person that would use this product? Where do they live? What's their life like? What is their, what kind of mold do they fit? And then how can I find them and reach them on Facebook? So that's the way I think about it. That's the way I go through. I'm not trying to find, and I'll add this as well. I'm not trying to find very specific, narrow audiences. That used to work really well back in like 2016, 2017. But now with Facebook's algorithm, it's so advanced. Facebook has like 1 million data points that they use on people to, match all these different things. I'm looking for obvious, broad level interests, and broad for me meaning generally 1 million, 2 million plus, right? And so I'm just trying to identify what category I think these people fit in and serve them with a really, really good ad creative.
So what you're saying is that as long as your product is winning, let's say, and that your ad creative is right, then Facebook is going to find your clients.
Yeah, then which is why there's still a myth out there. There's a myth out there that you'll hear that $5 daily budgets don't work anymore, and it's just so wrong. It's almost laughable to me because I do it all the time. I still start products the exact same way, where I will find like that audience, for example, gardening. Okay, this is an audience I've used several times. Okay, it's a very obvious audience. It's a big audience too. It's like 27 million people or something in the United States. Most people would think, oh, you start out a $5 budget, you're just not going to find buyers. It's not true. I've had products sometimes, not every time, but I've had products sometimes when it's a good product and a really good creative, you get a sale the first day on a $5 budget in an audience 27 million people, because Facebook, number one, is that good, and number two, the creative was that good, right? When you put the right product in front of the right people with a really good marketing angle, then you get sales. It doesn't matter if it's an audience of 2 million people or 30 million people.
Okay, thank you. Let's go with the next question. So Oscar asks us, first of all, he says, "Hi, Nick. Thank you for your time. What motivates you and drives you to keep pushing even when results don't show up? We know success doesn't come overnight, so I was wondering if you ever found yourself failing big, some campaigns, or choosing the wrong product, and how did you approach that?"
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think no matter what business model an entrepreneur chooses, it's a game of ups and downs. You know, it's a game of feeling amazing one minute and then the next minute feeling like everything is over and the world is crumbling around you. You know, so those highs and lows I think kind of come with it. But for me, you know, what has always kept me grounded is the size of the opportunity. And what I mean by that is that you know, e-commerce as an opportunity worldwide is so massive, and it's growing at such a massive rate, even faster now. They say COVID-19 and the lockdowns have sped up the digitization of the world and the e-commerce timeline by 10 years and 6 months because people had no choice, right? And so, you know, when I look at the size of the opportunity and I just realize that there are trillions and trillions of dollars being spent every year, you know, around the world. This money is in circulation, right? It doesn't matter if we step into the circulation or we choose to stay out of it. The money's in circulation. And so really the whole game of e-commerce is just trying to find something valuable with really good marketing to bring some of that circulation your way, you know, that money that's out there. And so for me, you know, that's the way I look at it. I think about it like this. I know there are going to be $1 million stores this year. People are going to start from nothing this year. They're going to succeed. They're going to kill it. It's going to happen whether I sit on the sidelines or I don't sit on the sidelines. And so I've always just had the attitude that the opportunity is so big that I know I'm in the right place, I'm in the right time, I'm in the right trend. There's no reason to stop. And I talk about this with people in my group sometimes as well. It's like you test a couple products, some people get discouraged, it doesn't work. Um, and I get that, you know, I definitely get that. But you know that e-commerce is booming right now. You know that the opportunity is massive. Literally everybody on this call watching this, we could have 1,000 people watching this right now. The opportunity is so big that we could all have $1 million store this year, right? Like that's just mind-boggling when you think about
Let's do
how
it.
big, you know, how big that is. And that's true, right? And so and for me there's nothing that could stop me from wanting to be part of that, getting my piece of that opportunity.
So thank you. So let's go with the next question. This one is from Michele, and he's asking us, how do you test 20 audiences with $5 a day with a CPM of $30 per day? You get 3-4 clicks in the US. What can you analyze with such low clicks?
Yes, I understand this question, and CPMs are, I think, a sometimes they're a very difficult thing for us as advertisers to wrap our head around because we don't have control over it. We have a little bit of control, right? Two, the only things that I really know that we can control. One, obviously, engagement on your creative. So if you're running engagement campaigns alongside your conversion campaigns, which I always do, that can help, right? Now, the degree of which it helps, hard to measure, but I know that it definitely helps. And if you're being active on your page, that also helps. All right. So now on the side of that, high CPMs. All right. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I would say that CPMs are a secondary metric. We get charged by impressions, right? That's how Facebook works. They charge you per 1,000 impressions. So basically, you're paying up front on your advertising. Facebook's getting paid no matter what. However, I have had products where the CPM has been $30, $40, right? And still getting purchases at a profitable cost, all on $5 daily budgets. All right. So the thing here is it's somewhat of a secondary metric to your actual key metrics, which for me are your CPC and your CTR, number one, right? This is what I look at day one and day two, because obviously before you have a purchase, before you have any add to carts, how do you know whether or not something's even worth continuing to let it run? And for me, that's looking at the cost per click and the click through rate. Now, when your CPM is higher, say you have a $40 CPM, your cost per click might be like $1.50, right? But your CTR might be 4.5%. So you're spending a little bit more, right? Your cost per click's a little bit higher, but based on having a CTR that good, I know that people are really responding to this well. Okay, that's important to understand because it's really crucial in the beginning for identifying audiences that have the potential, even though they have a high CPM, to keep them running. And then what you'll find is if you're hitting those key metrics and letting it run, you have to have your other key metrics, which is your cost per add to cart and your cost per purchase, right? So going into every product, say you're selling a product for $50 and it costs you $30 to ship to the customer, right? Just as an example. So you have a margin of $20. So basically your target cost per purchase is, let's just call it $20, right? That's your break even, is if you're getting purchases for $20. So for me, my target add to cart cost is always half of the target cost per purchase. So in that situation, it would be $10 as my target add to cart cost. Now, here's why that's important, because this is your second indicator about whether or not to turn something off before you spend too much money on it. So if I'm getting good cost per click, I see a good CTR on my ads, but I've now spent, $10, $15 and I haven't seen any add to carts yet, then for me, that's an indicator to turn that off, because I know that generally you're seeing at least a 50% drop off from add to cart to purchase. So if I'm not getting add to carts by 50% of my cost per purchase, it's probably not going to work out mathematically as a profitable item. So I have these key metrics. All right. I sorry guys, I know that can be maybe a little confusing without actually being able to write it down. But it's like I have these key metrics that I'm looking at, and my CPM is actually very secondary to me. What I'm looking at first is I'm following these key metrics I have and looking at the CPM second.
Okay. So there's a question from Oscar. You mentioned testing with $5 per day, but how do you get meaningful results with such a test if markets such as the US have CPMs greater than $20? Like, what kind of input are you getting from 300, 400 impressions? Isn't that too few, statistically speaking?
Well, for this one, all I can say is we have Facebook to thank. They have. I don't think that there is another platform. I mean, obviously we know about Google Ads, but the algorithm Facebook has is just incredible. Now, some of this might be impacted a little bit by iOS 14 and the whole privacy battle between the App Store, but up until this point, or until anything meaningful changes in that way, because it hasn't. I haven't seen any effect of that yet. I don't know how to explain it other than I'm letting Facebook do the heavy lifting, right? Like it is, and I'll be honest, for as much as I would like to sit here and say, I'm such a smart dude and I got it figured out, like honestly, I'm just playing the system. And one of the reasons I've been able to be so successful over the years and help so many people is because I don't go into it with any preconceived notions of my own. I don't go into it with any any skepticism. I go into it just willing to see if it works, and it does work, and it continues to work. And so I haven't stopped doing it. And so I can only really credit that to Facebook's algorithm and the fact that my strategy revolves around letting Facebook do the heavy lifting and just giving them the guidance and knowing that my main job is an advertiser. And this also, I think, plays a big factor, is to create really good marketing. That's how you can get few impressions and start actually still seeing results very early on, is because if you have 10 people drop shipping and I have the best video, well, chances are people are going to start responding to me very early, whether it's only 400 impressions or not. That's still 400 real people that have seen my product. And if I have a really good video and I've done a really good job marketing, and Facebook's algorithm has done a really good job finding the right people for that video, then it works, because these are people that I know are interested in my product.
That's lovely. So Svetlana asks us, when you use dynamic ads, how many combinations do you create usually? 2 text, 2 pictures, or 2 headlines or more?
That's a good question, but unfortunately, I do not use dynamic ads, so I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I know people that do, but my philosophy has always been to build the best ad from the beginning. with, in terms of the ad copy, the video, the thumbnail, the headline. Matter of preference, right? I know a lot of agency owners out there would be watching that and just shaking their head like, man, you're crazy. But that's just the way I've done it. So I can't answer that one. Yeah.
So Mia asks us, sorry, what's your preferred way of scaling? Do you put the winning ad set from the testing phase into a CBO and turn off those that stop performing?
Wait, can you say that again? I didn't quite catch it.
Sorry. What is your preferred way of scaling? Do you put the winning ad set from the testing phase into a CBO and turn off those that stop performing?
Yes. So I call this the CBO jump method. And basically, I explained it earlier without saying the name, but basically, what it means is that I isolate the audience that is performing well at $5 a day with that creative that's performing well. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with testing multiple creatives within an audience. I just don't do dynamic creatives on just one. But anyway, so once I've isolated that winning creative in that winning audience, yes, what I do is I'll duplicate it into a higher budget CBO. Usually $100 is where I start. I will create 5 copies of the audience within that CBO, 5 identical copies, minimum ad spend of $10 each. And then I will let it run, right? And I'll turn off the ad sets that don't work within the CBO, because not all of them will work. Sometimes only one audience will work. Sometimes 4 of them will work. Like it all just depends. But I will turn off the ones that don't work based on those key metrics I have, and then let the CBO budget fully optimize for the ones that are working. Because the magical thing about a CBO is once it starts optimizing for what's working, it's basically set it and forget it, right? I've literally had CBOs running for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months without even touching them, and they're printing money, right? Letting Facebook do the heavy lifting.
Okay. So Laura asks us, have you ever tried TikTok ads? If so, do you have any tips?
No, I've tried Snapchat ads. Didn't actually work very well for me. Right now, I'm most interested in YouTube ads, but I have not done TikTok yet.
Okay. So Famtili asks, please explain how to deal with tax due to the tax is different in each country.
Yeah. Look, I'm not trying to dodge this one, but I have to be clear here. I am not a tax advisor. I am not a certified public accountant. I am not legally allowed to give tax advice. I could say personally what works for the US is, I have an LLC, single member LLC. So I file pass through and I claim as much deductions as possible as any business would. But yeah, I would say, that varies so much country per country, and I don't want to get in any trouble here. So I would just refer you to look there, and there's actually quite a few good online services. Yeah, there's a lot of online services that can help with this. Based on what country you're in, you can hire virtual assistants and all kinds of things. But really, I'll tell you, I will say this because I don't mind saying this. My strategy has always been let the government know as little money as possible legally, right? I don't evade taxes, but I bring it down. I want the government to think I'm poor, basically, right? Like that's what I want my government to think of me. Otherwise, I got a target on my head. But that's my strategy. But I don't do anything else.
Yeah, so basically just refer to a specialist, somebody who can actually give you legal advice. That's our advice. Matilda does ask us, if I want to use a custom audience build up from main ads, would you create a copy of the main ad set or replace the original audience with the new one? In the first case, have I to optimize my ad set again?
Can I hear it again?
I'm sorry. It's a bit of a long one.
Yeah.
I want to use a custom audience to build from a main ads. Would you create a copy of the main ad set or replace the original audience with the new one? In the first case, do I have to optimize my ad set again?
So for the custom audience, I guess like I'm trying to figure out. I'm assuming what you mean is with, or what he means with that question is, as you know, like you create a custom audience and then you're saying, say you had an audience around 90 days and then would you do it again at 180 days? Like if I'm getting this wrong, I guess you can just submit the question again. But for me, I would create a new one. All right. So that would be my answer. When you start getting into custom audiences like lookalikes. So, you know, my custom audiences tend to come in two main areas. There's the retargeting, right, which I never change unless it's been like, say, you know, many months and they start to really seem like performance is dropping off again. I would start new ones. I always like to start new because I always want to isolate if something's working or not. So I know if I start a new one and it doesn't work, I can just turn it off and keep the original one. So that's, and then I can always go back and mess with the original one if I want to. So my first strategy is always to start something new while keeping the original running. That way I'm not messing with what's already working. I can always go back and mess with it if I want to. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Same thing with lookalikes. You know, if I'm using my lookalikes and they're working very well, I'll just let them keep running. If I ever want to substitute something in after, say, like another 100 days has passed or a significant amount of time, or say on your store, for example, here's a good one, right? Your emails from your Shopify store. You know, when I'm scaling a store every month, I will download that email list, right? Because say you're doing 5,000 orders a month, your custom audiences is going to significantly improve from one month to the next as you continue to add more data points. But I'm not going to erase that old custom audience, and I'm not going to erase anything that I was running already. I would just create a new custom audience. So I would have, say, customers August, customers September, customers, and every time I did that, I would test it again to see if the performance varies. Is it better? Is it worse? And yeah, so that's my strategy. I'm always creating something new.
That's lovely. Now, Michele asks, how many sales do you think one should start the transition from the drop shipping to private label? So basically, at what point should you transition from a product that does not have private label to something that you actually put a brand of yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a little subjective because it kind of comes down to the question, how far do I think I can scale this, right? And that can be a little subjective because, you know, it's hard. I know even some of the best drop shippers I know have made that prediction wrong, and sometimes, you know, you get stuck with inventory or this and that. So but here's the good thing, right? Let me. Custom packaging comes usually with a MOQ, right? Usually at least 1,000 pieces, because, you know,
we
it's
actually
not
have
worth
about
it.
100, 300 for custom packaging. So it's even less than that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So based on what so there you go. I mean, my point of that was going to be that the MOQ is generally affordable, right? So like if you're scaling and you're getting, I would say if you're starting to scale to, say, you know, it's so subjective, but I would say if you're starting to scale to, like, you know, 1,000 orders a month, and you could do it before that if you're really brand conscientious, or if you know there's really a problem with the packaging, that kind of matters too, right? Like sometimes packaging out of China, and you know, I know Carol might be watching this, who I've worked with at YakUFI, and she knows one of the biggest selling product that I had with them, the packaging out of China was terrible, and it was just like, so it was necessary very soon. Now we were scaling too, like it was scaling quickly, so I wanted custom packaging anyway, but the packaging was poor and it needed to be improved because it was giving a bad experience, which was causing complaints to come in, just based on, you know, them being marketed one thing but receiving something that had, you know, a little bit different of a tone to it, or a different, you know, a different
perhaps
language
like
to
a
it.
low perceived value, correct? Like it
Yeah,
was that bad.
exactly. So, no, the product itself was fine. It was just the packaging, which can have a big perception, right? You know, it's like if you get a
Absolutely.
package in the mail and it's all banged up and damaged, you automatically have these ideas about what you've received, even though you haven't used it yet. So, so anyway, yeah, I say all that because it's kind of subjective. If the packaging might need to be changed, and if you're scaling and you know the MOQ is affordable and you're going to be able to push through those orders, I'm not saying you have to order 10,000 units or 10,000 boxes at once. You know, you could order, say, 500. If they're 50 cents a piece, you're only talking about $250. And if you're doing $10,000 a month on your store, you should be able to afford $250 for the packaging. So so yeah, I would say probably when you're getting into that 5 figure per month range and you know, like you see the size of your audiences, you're like, okay, I'm doing 10, 20K a month and I've barely scratched the surface of these audiences, right? Like you can look at your impressions, say, you know, I have an audience of 10 million people and I've only got 50,000 impressions so far. Excuse me, you have so much room to scale there. You know, you're going to be able, like, you're not anywhere near running into saturation. So, long answer, but hopefully that gives a little bit of insight.
No, that's absolutely clear. Um, Oscar asks us again, if your scaling approach you mentioned adding the new, sorry, let me start over. In your scaling approach, you mentioned adding the new winning ad set from the testing phase in a new CBO campaign. But what's the point of having only one ad set in a CBO campaign? Or did you mean multiple ad sets from different tests?
It's one audience. So ad set equal audience, because like what I'm doing when I'm testing all those different audiences in the beginning, $5 daily budget per ad set per audience. I'm isolating what works, right? And I'm looking specifically for broader audiences because I know if it works at a smaller budget, it should work at a larger budget. It doesn't work all the time, to be fair. Like I'm not saying that this is 100%. There's no 100% in marketing, but it works more times than it doesn't when you have a good product and good marketing. So it's the reason that the reason that I duplicate it to a CBO and create 5 identical copies of the audience inside the CBO campaign is because of the way the Facebook algorithm works. Basically, if I have this audience of 10 million people and you picture it as just like a giant circle, right, that encompasses the entire audience size, Facebook has to take its best guess in the beginning and go out there and just start showing it to people. And Facebook does a really good job at that. That's why $5 budgets work. But essentially, what I'm doing is I'm giving myself the maximum chance of success, right? I know some people that will create even more than 5. They'll duplicate like even up to 10 copies in a campaign. But with that higher budget, I know Facebook's going to go out there and start spending a little bit more faster and a little bit more aggressively. So I want to give myself more chances to hit the winning pockets of that audience where Facebook's starting. And that's why I'll turn, sometimes the product is just super catches on for an audience and all of those identical copies work. Sometimes maybe only 1 or 2 works, but ultimately the goal is the same. I'm just trying to maximize my chance of success.
Lovely. So Yuris asks us, how can I learn your approach and strategy? Do you offer mentoring?
Look, actually, everything that I've talked about, I have some really good, really in-depth videos on my YouTube channel that are free, where I actually pull out the online whiteboard and I go through and I explain this strategy. I have a video on YouTube called $1.4 million in 2 months drop shipping, and I outline my entire strategy of how I scaled to $1.4 million in 2 months with a brand new store, brand new product, brand new pixel, using Yakify actually. And I actually think I recommend them as a supplier. And yeah, I also have a free training at ecomempires.co. I've always been a big believer in giving out really good free content. I believe it's one of the reasons that Ecom Empires has become one of the largest and most well-known communities out there, because I genuinely have tried to give really, really good stuff out there. I don't share like my product or my stores for free or anything, but you're going to see the ad strategy. I even show you inside some of my ad accounts for 6-figure months and things like that. You can either go there, like she pointed it there, ecomempires.co is where you can sign up for like a whole free training that shows you, step by step how to build a store, start the ads, this and that. Or you can head over to my YouTube channel where I have a lot of that stuff there as well.
Lovely. Michele asks us, how much effort should we put into building a beautiful Instagram, Facebook page? Do you think that the customer even look at those pages? Should I buy an Instagram page with at least 10K followers to increase my credibility?
You don't. So they don't necessarily work in tandem. And I say that because I'm not actually I don't have very much experience with influencer marketing in terms of drop shipping. I mean, I've done influencer marketing and things like that, but in terms of doing it for drop shipping, there's other people out there that have way more experience and knowledge on that. And in that case, yes, I would say building up a presence on your page is important because the influencers you're trying to contact, and a lot of times the audiences of those influencers will check your page. But on Facebook, it's different. If for some reason it's a different psychology. On Facebook, you don't need to build your page. You don't need to run page likes. You don't even need to post content. Now, I'm not saying that stuff is bad. If you want to build a brand, that stuff is actually really good to build that content and build that engagement on your page, but you don't need it. And I know you don't need it because I've started stores, and this is the way I typically start because I like to see if something's going to work based on the paid advertising. I create the page, banner, profile, image, and that's it. I launch the ad and it's off and running, right? And your page will naturally gain likes over time. But you'd be very surprised. And if you think about your own behavior on Instagram and Facebook, it's interesting because a lot of times when we see something on Instagram, we will go to the page. But most of the time, if we see an ad on Facebook that we think is really cool, most people don't visit the page. They'll just click to go visit the store.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
I do the same. I got targeted for a few campaigns in the past. And yes, I never... Now that I think about it, only when I have problems, I kind of look at the Facebook page. Only if I can have problems like with shipping or the product is bad, then I take my time and look at everything where I bought from. But otherwise, I don't. So that's nice. Fanny asks you, do you create different ad videos if a product has an audience of both older and younger customers? Or you use the same video for all age groups?
I would say that's making it a little bit complicated. That I'm not saying that couldn't work in some situations, but I don't do that. I typically am starting out with a very large age bracket. Usually 21 and older is usually my default, unless it's something I know that is more for an older audience. For example, I'm trying to think of an example, but say it's a product I know that is like a back brace or something that I know probably no 21-year-old needs because they're too young. I would probably target something starting like 35 and older for something like that. So it kind of depends based on the product, but I'm not usually creating. Now, I've never created two creatives, one for an older audience and one for a younger audience.
Okay. So Laura asks us, do you think Facebook is still being as volatile with shutting down accounts with no apparent reason? I finally got an account back after 5 months and want to be careful starting up ads again, so that it doesn't get shut down again.
So what I have come to learn, having dealt with a lot of this myself after Q4 of last year and beginning, Q1 this year, is that on new ad accounts, Facebook likes to see kind of a warm-up process. So if it's a brand new ad account, the warm-up process that I have kind of learned is that you don't necessarily want to just jump out on day one and start spending like $200 a day testing stuff, which is typically what I used to do. And that for some reason on new accounts is like a flag. And so the process I typically follow now, after working with some advertising companies, is like a staggered approach. like day one, create the Facebook page. Day two, add some content, invite some friends to the Facebook page. Day three, add a payment method. Day four, create an engagement campaign, let it run for like 2 or 3 days, and then start creating some conversion ads. So on new ad accounts nowadays, it seems like there's generally like a 5 to 7 day warm up period before I'll jump right into like spending maybe $100, $200 a day to start testing stuff. And yeah, it just seems that's the way Facebook is. I don't know why it's like that, but it's kind of become the best practice on a new ad account these days.
Okay, so SKMD asks, how to manage PayPal hold? My funds have not been released and it's been already 68 days.
Man, I've dealt with this as well. Actually, for the longest time, I never had any problems with PayPal, and they were always on my side. You know, they've always been great at disputes, and you know, then in November, actually, it was November last year. I pulled up an account I hadn't used in a while for a new store PayPal account. Scaled that store very quickly. It was like 0 to 150 in 3 weeks, and they held, you know, just all of a sudden they decided to permanently limit my account with it was like $35,000 in there, I think. And you know, when they do that, you can't just call the general customer service line. So what I would refer you to do is go on. I forget exactly what I searched. I went somewhere on Google and I was just searching, like literally I was searching what can I do if PayPal has permanently limited my account? And I found this really interesting thread and it worked for me. And basically I don't remember it exactly, but I'll give you the kind of the summary of what I did. Is it was like step one, go to the Better Business Bureau, right? Because PayPal's an American, I think it's an American company, and you know the Better Business Bureau in America is like the watchdog. So you can go to the Better Business Bureau, find the right PayPal organization, I think it's the one in California, and file your complaint. Now, a couple things matter. Was the account ever limited in the past? Were you doing anything wrong? Did you answer all the questions they asked you, right? And those things can matter. But if you've done nothing wrong, if you're providing tracking numbers and it was just like all of a sudden out of nowhere they did this, then you can explain that case and say, look, I provided the tracking numbers, I provided the supplier invoices, I gave them everything, you know, I'm shipping products to my customers, I've never been limited before, PayPal is holding my money, you know, it like explain it all very professionally, but also very much showing that you did everything you could and PayPal is just not cooperating and you have done nothing against their terms of service to warrant this kind of action. You know, like very lawyer kind of talking, explaining your case. File that on the Better Business Bureau. Yeah, exactly. And then also there is again, you're going to have to do a little bit of digging, but if you just Google this stuff, like I didn't have to dig too far. I was just Googling this to find other pissed off people. And I found some threads out there that basically give you the executive email addresses at PayPal, right? There's several of them. Okay. And then, so you're also going to take that case and make sure you have all this information as well, like your invoices from your supplier, tracking numbers, whatever, right? You can have that stuff and you can add it as an attachment and start blasting emails to every single PayPal executive email address you can get. Like just send one out a day and just keep sending them. And, you know, eventually, I think it took me about 3 weeks. I never got a response, by the way. This is what was interesting. So I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I never got a response to any of my emails. Just one day I woke up and my BBB complaint was responded to with a nice long message saying, we're sorry, you know, we looked into this and we realized you're right. You didn't do anything wrong here. You provided us the documents. We have unlocked your account. Your funds are available for immediate withdrawal and it's been completely restored. So, you know, I can't say that that'll work 100% of the time, but I found this stuff by doing some research on Google using the word permanently limited PayPal account. And it worked for me, you know, so it's something you can try. You do have some action you can still take here.
Absolutely. So we have just a couple more questions. Keisha asks, what other payments options do you use?
I use PayPal and Shopify payments typically, or Stripe. Stripe sometimes, like some, Shopify payments. Like if they hit you with a reserve, sometimes you can use a checkout app to connect with Stripe directly. I know Stripe's not available in every country, so if you're watching and it's not available, I'm sorry, I don't really have a recommendation because I've always used Stripe, PayPal, or Shopify payments. Which, by the way, Shopify payments is Stripe, but they just kind of charge you a little extra and call it Shopify payments.
Okay, so a follow-up from the same person, from Kisha. Any tips for people living outside the US? How to tackle setting up a bank account like Stripe, PayPal, anything that comes to mind?
The best way to do it is to form a US company. And I don't personally know if you've looked into this or not, so I don't mean to like insult anybody's intelligence, but it's actually pretty simple to do. There are online companies that, like myusacorporation.com, very simple. I mean, it's going to cost you a couple $100, but they will set you up with an LLC. They'll set you up with a US bank account connected to that LLC. They'll get you your EIN. And usually most services will even get you a virtual business address and a 800 number as well, right? If you get all these things, then you can open a Stripe account. So, and by the way, again, I'm not a tax expert, but there's no double taxation. So if you are running a business in the US, you're only paying whatever taxes you owe, according to like whatever kind of business you're doing. So it's not like you're getting double taxed. But the easiest way is to set up a US LLC if you want to be able to use something like Stripe, because then you can easily access it using your US company and your US bank account. And just so everybody knows, whatever, because one of the things I've heard people say is they're like, oh, but how do I know, if I set up a US company for this store and it doesn't work, then what do I do? Do I have to set up a new company? And no, you don't. You can set up one main company and it's just your umbrella for everything, right? And in every store that you have is doing business as. So like I have my US LLC, which is called Ecom Empires. That's my company name. And every store that I have is just a subsidiary of Ecom Empires. So whether the store fails or the store makes $1 million, doesn't matter. I still am just using the same company.
Okay. Laura asks, have you ever run Facebook ads to build your subscribers on YouTube? Trying to decide how and if I should do that so that I can build revenue through my YouTube page as well, YouTube channel as well.
No, I haven't actually. No, I don't have like a massive following on YouTube. I've never really been a a YouTuber. I guess I think I have like 21,000 subscribers, which has all been organic just over the years of as I built e-commerce. Yeah, it's just been over the years as I built Ecom Empires, everything. So I would say like it kind of depends, but if you want to know what strategy I did that worked well, and I really could have put money into this if I cared more about getting more subscribers, is when you go to ecomempires.co, you'll see that it's a free training. All of the videos that are in there are embedded from my YouTube channel. So as people have gone through my free training over the years, that stuff has also been on YouTube. So I'm getting all of those views on YouTube. Again, nothing massive, but I know I have over 1 million views on YouTube at this point. So I'm getting those views on YouTube, which is giving YouTube good signals to my channel to help kind of push some of my stuff out in the category. And then I'm also getting subscribers that way as well. And then when I have some videos that do well as like say a coherent course, say in my case, like say 6 videos that all have to do with building your Shopify store, right? You can put that in a playlist. You can run that as a Google ad, as a discovery ad to reach more people on YouTube. And that can bring a lot more people to your channel, which has worked for me in the past. I think getting people to go from Facebook to YouTube is difficult because you're pushing them from one platform to another. It would be easier to start building your YouTube channel organically. And then when you're finding some of the stuff that works, some of the content that's working with people, start using that and putting that out as discovery ads on YouTube using other related YouTube channels, right? So like for me, for example, if I want to reach more people, I know I can go look up some of the other big YouTube dropship influencers, and I can run ads targeting their channel with my stuff, and that way I can bring more people to my channel.
Okay. Ricky asks, would a lawyer letter do anything to recover an ad account?
I've never tried it. I have heard. I have heard, but I can't confirm or deny. Only rumors I've heard about sending Facebook, official letters from an attorney to their actual headquarters. I can't confirm or deny that though. I have heard the rumor that some people have tried that.
Okay, this is a question for me. Michele asks, are people working at Yakify allowed to dropship themselves? I mean, they have a competitive advantage of knowing what's working and what's not. And no, we do not dropship ourselves. We just help you guys source your products and do everything we can to assist you in your business. So we don't dropship. We're not allowed to. And so these are all the questions that we had. And let's talk about the bonuses now. So we have a big surprise for you, for you guys that are watching us. Can you present the offer that you have, Nick? Like an offer from Ecom Empires. What's the bonus that you are going to give?
Oh, well, the actually, you know what? I will give a bonus right now that is completely unexpected. I was not actually prepared to give this away, but I will do this because Yakify and I have had a really great relationship drop shipping. So I have a program. This is a free course, right? ecomempires.co, like I mentioned, completely free course. But I'm not going to count that, as a bonus because anybody can go access it. It's really, really good. I promise you, you can go look at all the testimonials there of people that have gone through this. Some of the big guru names that you see out there today got their start in Ecom Empires. I promise you. But I have a paid program as well. It's a course that I created called One Product Profits, where it's drop shipping, but it shows a specific form of drop shipping that I have really come to like the most in the past year, where you build a one product store, which works really well because of the high perceived value and the branding that you can build around that product. And this is, again, I have the free education for anybody that wants that, but this was my paid program because in the paid program, I actually show you a real store, real ad account, and the whole process of starting it from zero and scaling it to $1 million in 4 months, which happened last year. And I was using Yakify as a supplier. So anyway, this course sells for $9.97. Let's pick somebody and give them free access.
Lovely. So Yakify is also offering a special bonus. So if you're at home, please register on yakify.com today using this link that we're going to show on the screen right now. And you will get 60 free quotations. Here it is. Here's the link. You will get 60 free quotations for the first month instead of 30. So 60 free image search quotations. That means that you get your quote, B2B price, in real time. But let's talk about money now. It is time to choose the three favorite questions. So remember that the winner, guys at home, remember that the winner is going to get contacted by our colleagues in their private messages. So just in the messenger on Facebook. So Nick, do you have any winners? What was your favorite question?
I'm actually running all the questions through my mind again now because I was just in answer mode. So I think that one of my favorite questions was, you gotta give me a second here.
It's okay.
I'm having trouble remembering the questions that were asked to me. I think that one of my, because a lot of them were about like ad accounts.
Yes, ad accounts, scaling. We had a question about PayPal and also mentoring. Also how you start testing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think my favorite question, because I can
I
remember.
have to choose three. I can say them back to you if it's useful.
Yeah, you can say some of them back to me. I liked the question about one. I remember there was a question that was about specifically, and I'll tell you why I like this one. Somebody asked me why I duplicate the ads 5 times. Why do I create the identical copies within the CBO campaign when I do that? And I like that question because I like it because it's not necessarily just accepting the strategy without wanting to understand the context behind it, which I think is smart. I think it's smart no matter who's on here telling you this or that, like understanding why are they telling you that when some people come up with these crazy Facebook ideas. So that question was something about why do you duplicate 5 times within the same CBO instead of just doing it one time?
Okay. Then there was a question about how Facebook is still being kind of random at shutting down accounts. Volatile, they said. They used a prettier word, let's say. And then there was a question about do you create different videos for older or younger audience? How can I approach your strategy? What else was there? There was a question about CPO campaigns, how to kind of in the scaling approach. Then there was one. Oh, how do you transition from dropshipping to private label? That one too.
Oh yeah,
And when should you transition?
that was a good question too. Yeah, I like that one as well. When do you transition? Because that was a tough question. That one really got me thinking on like I really had to think about one. That was a good question.
So the last one, let's see what else do we have here. I'm going to give you like a small summary because some of them are very long. So how to target the right audience on Facebook marketing. What motivates you and drives you to keep pushing even more?
Yes,
even
I
when
like that one
results
too. That was
like
see,
that.
that was one
So
of
we
the
had
that was one of the first ones. Sorry, everybody watching. It's so hard to remember when you're just here answering questions for an hour. But
yeah. So
that was a really good
how do
question
you
as well
motivate yourself? Okay,
because
so we have
mindset
the
is
three questions.
yeah.
Just before you go, because we know we kept you a bit longer than expected, can you tell us a bit more on your bonus on in terms on how can you get it and what people have to do to kind of get it?
Yes. So what this bonus is, it's a free course. Well, it's the one product profits course. It's not free. It's normally $9.97, like I said, and we have hundreds of members that have paid $1,000. So it's definitely, I think, a really good bonus to give out. Hopefully, somebody's excited to get this. It's so you will get access to the course. And you'll get access to the private group as well, where I help people and answer their questions and provide updates and content as well. Again, and that's private group, other than Ecom Empire. So the way to get access to that is I will need, I'll just need you guys to share me whenever you contact them. I'll need to, I guess, get in contact with them by email because I'll need to add them manually to the course by their email so that they can access the content. And then I'll also need to give them the link to join the group. It's a secret group, so I'll have to give them the link so that they can join. And of course, I'll need to know their name so I know that it's not just some random person trying to join.
That's good. So the questions that you have chosen, the winners are Oscar. Then we have Michele, and the third one was the one you said that duplicates the ad set 3 times, correct? I'm just going through the questions to see the name of the winner. So we have Oscar, we have Michele, and the third one, just give me one moment. I'm sorry, I just have them all on my phone, so I'm just going through them. It's just it was such an interesting talk, and that's why we have a lot of questions.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
It was so interesting. It even kept my dog quiet for the entire hour and a half. He didn't say
What's
a word.
His name?
Coco. He didn't even say a word the whole time.
Adorable. And he's just a puppy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's only 3 months old.
Very cute. Well, I'm sorry, I just can't find it. I can't find this the third winner, but we'll contact the third winner as well via private messages. So our colleagues are going to get in touch. And yes, we would like to thank you once more very much for joining us today. It was absolutely amazing. We have learned. I can say that we have learned a lot from you, and just thank you for sharing all your experience. And guys, he is the founder of Ecom Empire, so just go to Facebook as well and join his group. You can learn a lot of good things there. And come to Yakify, come to our dropshipping tricks and tips group as well, because we share a lot of we share some hot products going on right now. We share a lot of tips. We give suggestions, and we ask any question. We answer any questions you have. So yes, thank you very much, Nick, and we wish you a good evening, because we can see that you're actually in the dark already. It must be dark outside, isn't it?
Yeah, it is dark outside here. I'm in the Philippines, for anybody watching that's wondering.
Oh wow,
I
that's
live in the
amazing.
Philippines for I'm from America, but I've lived here for 2 years now. So yeah, it's the freedom
That's
lifestyle.
exciting. Is it always warm there?
Yes, it's actually starting to get really hot here.
All right. Well, we won't keep you any longer. Thank you very much again, and we'll see you next time, hopefully. And we wish you a good evening.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching.